Please proceed.
General, I want to start with an area of bipartisan accord that seems to be what we're getting towards. Today's the 35th anniversary of the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which established vastly different sentences for crack and powder cocaine. We are seeing a wonderful convergence in Congress, most recently in the House of Representatives, where you had this wide bipartisan vote. I'm not sure if there's been a bigger bipartisan vote this year, where 149 Republicans voted along with almost all the Democratic caucus to address this disparity. The effect of that law was 100 to 1. The work of, again, bipartisan senators here, led by Senator Durbin, negotiated the Fair Sentencing Act, which was a change of that disparity from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. Senator Durbin and I now have introduced something called the Equal Act, which has already been passed by the House. We've got Republicans and Democrats on board, Tillis, Leahy, Paul, Graham, as well as my colleague, Senator Ossoff, on my side of the aisle. The president, Biden, publicly supported the bill, and again, I just think this should be an area that's an obvious accord. But I really want to know your opinion. Do you agree that it's time to end the sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine, especially given the disparate impact it has on people of color? And if you believe that, why do you believe that?
Yes, I do believe that. The Justice Department supports that bill, supports equal treatment of crack and powder cocaine. The Sentencing Commission has, over the last decade, maybe more than that, produced a series of reports which undercut what was supposed to be the scientific basis for the distinction between the two, and it's made quite clear that there is no warrant basis for distinguishing between the two. So once that is undercut, there's going to be no grounds for that. On the other side, not only are there no grounds for it, it clearly does have a disparate impact on communities of color, also clearly recognized by the Sentencing Commission statistics. You have that kind of circumstances, there's no justification for this, and we should end this.
I appreciate that. One last just clarification. While there is a lot of unanimous support for this on both sides of the aisle, a lot of support for it on both sides of the aisle, there are some people that worry about it somehow affecting crime or crime rates. Could you discuss your opinion of that perspective?
Well, I think powder cocaine is as dangerous with respect to crime rates as crack cocaine, both of which have now been unfortunately overtaken by fentanyl and the opioids. But both of those are bad problems from the perspective of crime, but equalizing penalties for crack and powder should have no difference with respect to our ability to fight violent crime or drug crime.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, you saying that for the record. Can I revisit what Senator Durbin brought up at the top? And this is a letter that he and I sent you regarding the people that are currently on home confinement. In the last days of the Trump administration, on January 15, 2021, the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel issued a memo arguing that the BOP must re-incarcerate everyone on the CARES Act home confinement at the end of the covered emergency period if they do not otherwise qualify for home confinement. Now, these are folks that were extremely scrutinized beforehand. They've been returned to their communities. They have been re-engaging with family, with children. They are folks that are not showing any criminal activity or any problems. Senator Durbin and I really believe, and we were urging the Department of Justice to rescind this Trump-era memo, which incorrectly concludes that people who have been released to home confinement and who have abided by the conditions of their relief must be torn away from those families and go back to BOP custody. And so I just really would love to know where you stand on this issue. To me, it's an issue of justice. It's an issue of restorative justice. It's an issue of compassion and understanding the collateral consequences of ripping people back and putting them in prisons unnecessarily, not to mention the cost to taxpayers. Clearly, I have my opinion, but I'd like to hear yours.
Look, I agree with you. It would be a terrible policy to return these people to prison after they have shown that they are able to live in home confinement without violations. And as a consequence, we are reviewing the OLC memorandum that you spoke about. We are also reviewing all of the other authorities that Congress may have given us to permit us to keep people on home confinement. And as you know, we are also, and the president is reviewing the extent of his clemency authority in that respect.
How long should we expect that review before you make a determination?
I can't say exactly, but
Are we talking 6 months or less than 6 months?
I'm not exactly sure how long that will take. It may require rulemaking, and so that may take more time. But we can be sure that it will be accomplished before the end of the CARES Act provision, which extends till the end of the pandemic. And so we are not in a circumstance where anybody will be returned before we have completed that review and implemented any changes we need to make.
Okay, and then in regards to just compassionate release in general, will the Department of Justice consider filing motions for individuals on home confinement who reside in judicial districts like the 11th Circuit, where courts have interpreted compassionate release statutes to cover only medical age and family circumstances grounds? Obviously, there's still a pandemic, and we know that putting people into environments greatly increases their chances. I'm concerned about restrictions on compassionate release in places like the 11th Circuit.
So this is something I haven't thought about, Senator. I guess the Bureau of Prisons, which is the agency that decides those questions, has to have a uniform policy across the country. I hadn't thought of the possibility of making distinctions based on which circuit, because you're quite correct, the different circuits have different views about the scope of compassionate release. I'll take that back for consideration if it's all right with you.
All right, I have some concerns about First Step Act implementation, which I'll ask in writing to you. I want to be respectful of my colleague, my friend, the senator from the great state of Oklahoma.
Ouch.
I'm sorry, sir. Forgive me. Oh,